In the name of the Father, and Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, Amen. I wish everyone a blessed fast of Ninevites, or Jonah's fast, as we call it. And as you know, we're in the second day. The Jonah's fast started yesterday for 3 days. So it's a beautiful time of the year as we get a taste of what we're going to be hearing in 2 weeks, God willing, when we start the great fast, Lent. So this is a very short preparation for it. So I hope everyone is taking advantage of these blessed days and enjoying the beautiful prayers and the beautiful hymns for that time. As we know, we a couple of weeks now, we've been doing the theme called Spiritual Desires. And as I said before, when we always talk about desires, we think something negative, something lust, something bad, something evil. So we thought we'll put a twist to that and focus on that we can have good desires, we can have spiritual desires, beneficial desires. So we've covered a number of desires so far. We've covered the desire for service, and the desire for change. And tonight we're very blessed to have with us Debbie Armanious, and she's going to talk to us about, guess what? The desire for, I don't have to say it, it's the desire for self-denial. So we welcome Debbie. Do you want the microphone here? Or is this how we get
Okay. Oh, you're all the way in the back, isolating me. Is that really where you want to sit? Makes me a bit lonely up here. Yeah? Don't care? I look different than everybody else, so it'd be really nice if you moved forward. That way I can blend in. Thank you. It's like I have to shout, it's like, great. I'm good, how are you? Good. Thank you for moving forward. Thank you. Uh-oh, did it again. Good. Yeah, I know, no one ever wants to sit in the front row in case someone picks on you. So I promise anyone in the first 2 rows, you'll pick on me. Beyond that, I'll pick on you. How's that? It's a good deal? That's good. Good. Hey, Mina, how are you? Good evening. It's always amazing. Tuesday night at 9 o'clock and you guys show up. It's amazing. Really. Thank you. All right. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. One God, Amen. Okay, you know what the talk's about. Self-denial. Can you hear me in the back, or should I yell a bit? That's okay? Like that? Some talks are inspiring. Some talks are powerful. Some talks are enjoyable. Some are enlightening. When Abuna gave me this one, it's like trying to sell something that nobody wants. And you think, oh my gosh, where do you start with this? But by the end, it was a bit easy. But this one might hurt, so I apologize a little bit. And by the sheer topic, I mean, look at it. It's not going to be an easy one. But we all know that after this picture is the resurrection and life. And so the story doesn't end here. And that's what I want to keep reminding you throughout the next 40 minutes, that self-denial can be painful. Yes? Sorry, I thought that was early for a question. That self-denial can be painful, but it's only a chapter in a very long book. And if you can endure it, and if you can get past it, the end chapter will blow your socks off. It's worth sticking it out. And if any audience were to be discussing this topic, it's young people, because you are brave, you are tough, you have heaps of energy, you are very smart. So these things are what get us past this moment. You know what it's like to be in a predicament that's pretty tough. You can push through it. I mean, when you get old, you get tired, you get sick. When you start even fasting, let's take fasting. We're about to go into the big Lent. Old people have to take their medications. They can't fast too long. But you guys, you are the green beret of the army, literally. Like, you're fit. You can endure this. I'll start with the definition. The denial of one's own interest and needs, self-sacrifice. Now, the definition alone doesn't really grab us because we live in the flesh. We don't like any of these things. And we're smack in the middle of Jonah's fast. I'm going to sort of, at the end of this talk, jump into the story of Jonah. It's a fine example of self-denial that he didn't want. He didn't want to go to Nineveh. But the story itself tells us that there is a need behind the self-denial. If we were given the opportunity to meet Christ tonight, Coptic Orthodox young people, you would run a mile. This is why our monasteries in Egypt people flock to. We go back to the church when we want to re-engage with Christ. Self-denial is that ticket back to Him. The gospel story starts with the Son of God leaving a magnificent, enjeweled heaven, a throne room. Just think of the nicest thing you've ever seen and multiply it by 1,000,000. He was happy, he was being worshipped, and in a moment he leaves that place where he is worshipped and travels to this miserable planet for a period of 33 years. That wasn't an easy 33 years. From the moment he is born, he is discriminated against because he is the child of a single mum. Even today, in the 21st century, single mums have it hard. So from the moment of his birth, he is sacrificing who he is, the Messiah, the Son of God. And so the person that we believe in, our God, our Messiah, our salvation to return back to heaven, is a God that sacrificed everything, even his Son. So to pull self-denial out of the story of Christ is impossible. So if you're sitting here baptized, if you're sitting here with a Christian name, if you are sitting here with gold crosses and tattoos, you are his and you have been chosen. And there's a reason that you have been called. I might have said it, but I'll ask you again really quickly so that it's a bit engaging, so we're together. Why? So hands up if you were born overseas. Oh, very good. And if you're born here. So it's about half-half. All right, so both of your families, whether you've been born overseas or whether you've been born here, you were brought here for a reason. What are those reasons? Better life, immediately. What else? Why did your parents pack their bags, wave to their parents, and set off to probably the most remotest place on the globe? Try and do it yourself. I couldn't do it, but away from persecution. And these are fair reasons to leave your homeland, even with the blessings of the Coptic Church, with the monasteries. And imagine you're ripped. It must have been like you ripped their heart out, but they left for these reasons, fair reasons. What if I told you, as the sort of the person looking a little bit odd in the room, a little bit different, what if I told you that they believed that, but I believe it was for a different reason? What if I told you that your migration, your families were chosen to come here to share good news to people like me and to my families, to the families like mine? We did not know the gospel. We didn't have the Bible, we didn't have Christmas stories, we didn't have Easter, we didn't know. And I don't share that very much, but I've been doing a lot of history on my own family. And I knew, because my last name is Samuels, it's a Jewish name. But I know we never had any Jewish teachings in our family. So the story goes, we were very, very bad Jews. That's one side of the family. The other side of the family were Catholic Irish. And because we're fifth generation, by the time, having just celebrated Australia Day, we arrived here against our will. And we lost Christianity. So both sides of the family went, nah, we don't want either. And we were brought up with nothing. And my father put a decree on the door saying, we will not baptize our children, no sort of evangelists in the house, God, whatever. So I'm telling you for sure that, and I always say this wherever I go, there are 4 Gospels to us here. There are Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. But what if those people that don't know Matthew, Mark, Luke and John don't have a Gospel to read or a Gospel to go to or a Gospel to find out the news of the Messiah, the self-denying Saviour? So then we have a problem. But God solved that. He created you. So each and every one of you, by your name, are the 5th Gospel. So here is the beginning of your self-denial. You have been handpicked. And this is the beauty of self-denial. You have been handpicked by God to come here and to be the 5th Gospel to those who do not read, or do not have the book, or don't know the way. Last night I was in a meeting where most of the room were Christian, and it was at Exodus. We had a meeting there, and one of the ladies is a veiled Muslim lady. She comes all the time. Her son is having trouble with some addiction, and so she's been coming for years, and she came to this meeting, and afterwards she came, and when we sent the invitation out, she said, "You sure you want me to come? You know what I look like?" And I went, "Absolutely, come." And by the end of the night, she came and she said, "You've known me for a long time and I'm veiled, but you still invite me. My knowledge of my God and your God, what I know of my God and now what I see of your God, there is love here. I know a bit about love, but I'm seeing it, a God of the Christians that loves and has given so much." And she said, "I'm not Christian, but I am feeling this love that is between the two faiths." It's about declaring and showing self-denial. So when life doesn't go your way in the traffic in Sydney, and you react with your cross and your crucifix in your car, people are watching. They're watching how you act. And how you act speaks how your God speaks and acts. So it starts with the self-denial of little tiny things during the day, not swearing at the person at the lights, not getting upset at work, maybe taking the road of submission in a conflict. Everyone's watching us, believe me. And they will see the God mirrored in your life. So how you are responding is how they see it. If we are to share the gospel of the Almighty God sending his Son to a human form, then we must have that human form as much as we can. And that's where our own interests, our own needs are put aside. And it begins when you're very little, when eventually you stop drinking milk during the fast, learning to say, I will not have this so I can gain something else. That sort of self-denial, if you can control you, because you are your worst enemy, if you can control the enemy, then you've won the war. Whether you have noticed, there is a mighty war on. Some people say that this generation that we live in now is the generation of me. Everything's about me. But then when you talk to old people, they say, well, we had that too. So I think it's a strategy of the enemy that has been around for a long time. If I can convince you that you are the most important person in your life, the gospel has been beaten. Because the gospel is one, and I'll keep reminding you, the gospel, all of this, all these stories, all these lives imitate self-denial. All of them. Even if you were illiterate, I could look around and know and find the stories of each one of these icons. So there's definitely a war going on. That war is what the world communicates and what our faith communicates. One is self-entitlement. And in the story of Jonah, again and again, we see him saying, nope, I'm not going to those people because I know better than God. I know when I get there and I tell them the story, he'll just change his mind and save all of them. Why should I get in a boat and travel up there? I'd rather go to the resort down the other way. I'll go to Tarsus. Much better place. When things are at the end, they do repent. First thing Jonah goes, see, I told you I'm going out and sitting under a tree. And he expects and he thinks the tree's going to shelter him and he's entitled to that. Immediately he goes, I'm entitled to this shade. And then God takes that away and he goes, I'm not going to suffer for anything. I'm not going to come here and then stand in the hot sun for this reason, to save thousands of lives. He's not interested. The prophet Jonah. Our faith talks of self-denial, so this is in conflict. This is completely two separate armies. And every day we step up out of our bed and we hit the bed at night, that war is on. Every single day of our lives. 24 hours a day. And if we become aware of that war, I think everyone likes to have a crack at winning. I'm terribly competitive, horribly, to the detriment of myself. So if someone says, I can't do it, I go, right, I'll do it. Yes, it's really terrible. I've got one child that's the same, and the other one is not going to do that. But most of us want to win. We don't wake up and want to be losing. So the enemy or the power to convince you that you are more important than anyone out there is the moment that we lose out on huge blessings. So getting back to being special people, if you think that this sort of gathering and the one that we come on Sunday and the one we go on Friday, if you think that's it, this is self-fulfilling. I'm really happy. We're very happy to see you. But we must ask ourselves, what do you do with this petrol station? Do you just use it to go home and then come back again? Because that's not the story of the gospel. This is the petrol station that you fill up and you're supposed to go, and I'm not talking about preaching. I'm talking about imitating the Messiah. And what does that mean? It means being the goodness when there's none. Being the forgiving when there's none, being the one that washes the feet when there is no one, when everyone's taking their bit. If we, the cream of the crop, us Christians, if we aren't imitating the gospel, then the question remains, who is to do that? Shall we wait for someone else? With all the history of the church, of our Coptic church, of 2,000 years of servants, of teachings, of books, of, like, what church has the Stena Rohban? What one has pages upon pages of discipline and instruction but ours? We have a list of, unlimited list of examples. If we can't do this, if self-denial is something that is abhorrent, and I'm not going there because I'm more important, if we think like that, then who will carry the gospel? Who will bring it to people like me? I don't think your families are valued more. I get a bit narky about this bit. I don't think your families are any dearer to God than mine, because He created all of ours. Would you agree? Is that too harsh to say? Then why is it, ask the question to yourself, why do you have the knowledge and we have nothing? Did He create us to condemn us? Or did He create you to enlighten us? And that's the beginning, the beauty of self-denial. If you want to see the face of Christ, and if I said to you, He's going to appear down there in 5 minutes' time, you will rush, like all of the monastery where Saint Bishoy was, you will rush up a mountain and you will pass by and not see Him. But if you follow this line, this self-denial, this beauty, it's like a ticket, because you will imitate Him so much that when you look in the mirror, you won't see acne, you won't see two eyebrows that are a bit uneven, you won't see, I have to pick on them, I pick on you, all of you, muscles. What you will see is a Christ, a person imitating Christ in self-denial. And then you will say, haha, there's Him, because I can't do this. It hurts too much. I want my sleep. Even Jonah, it's only 4 chapters, but when you look at it, he is falling asleep a lot. Even the people in the boat that he gets in, they're throwing things out of the boat, trying to appease a God they don't know, and where's Jonah? The one with the message, he's asleep. And when he finishes with Nineveh, he goes out and sits under a tree for a nap. Okay, so the I generation. Can you guys, I'll read it because you can't see it that far. Self-entitlement. These are 2 things that really are grasping. They're really trying to contain or control us at the moment a lot. Self-entitlement. If someone has a sense of entitlement, that means the person believes he deserves certain privileges. Think about it. How many times have you thought to yourself, I deserve this? I deserve to watch. I do it all the time. I get home at 9, 10 o'clock and I think I'll just turn the TV on because I deserve to watch whatever for an hour. Where is that law? Do we forget quickly that a whole lifetime was eaten up with the life of Christ? And he's arrogant about it. I want it, I deserve it, I'm entitled to it. The term culture of entitlement suggests that many people now have highly unreasonable expectations about what they are entitled to. There was a kid at Exodus the other day, and 17, goes to the gym, smart kid, but he's not going to school and he's not going to work, and he wakes up late, and I go, well, don't you want to sort of get a job, or, and he goes, why should I? Centrelink's going to pay me. And he's right. Why, if he can live off $200, he can spend the whole day in the gym and eat at his parents' place and make $200. Sounds like a deal. But he feels he's entitled to that. I'm entitled because the law says I'm entitled. But it's not a good law, because by that he is now enabled, he's being enabled to be just completely useless, really. So self-gratification, the indulgence or satisfaction of one's own desire. I desire it, I want it, I will have it. Pick anything in your lives that you want, whether it's shopping or chocolates or the $3,000 bag, or whether it's the $500 sand shoes, or it's whatever. You deserve it, I want it, I'll get it, and I will do anything to get it. Anything. I included the synonyms for this: indulgence, waste, abandonment, excess, extravagance, free living, and the prodigal son. Think about this: evil and wantonness. The son had everything, but he wanted the money. He would rather sacrifice his father for the money. One son stayed and endured the farm and the hard work. The other son said, I'm not doing this. I'm not getting dirty every day, and you're not giving me anything. Give me my inheritance, what I deserve, and I'll go. And he ended up in a very worse place, eating with pigs. The antonyms for this is temperaments, unselfishness, virtue, moderation, and saving. Completely the opposite. So who are we? Which army do we belong to? One that is indulgent and self-fulfilling, and by that we end up in sometimes very difficult situations? Or are we of the camp that imitates the Messiah that saved humanity? For God so loved the world that gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. I'm a mother. You're not getting my son. I don't care what happens to you. Sorry. I only have one son. And we're not talking humanity here. We're talking God sacrifices his only begotten Son, so us, miserable people, that really whinge a lot to him and aren't happy with what we get most of the time. And when we don't get it, it's like, well, shouldn't I deserve that? I served on every Sunday for the last 10 years. Shouldn't I have fill in the blank? Or I come to church every Sunday. Shouldn't I have blank? I think sometimes that, especially, we forget that, just be St. Mary for a moment when Christ is on the cross. Just for a moment. No mother can endure, and the fathers will tell you, if you've got families with sick kids in hospital, the parents always say, let me be there and save my son. Give me the sickness, let me take the chemotherapy, let me do the operation. I can't endure my son suffering for whatever reason. Imagine your son suffering and dying for all of humanity. And you just think all the sins of humanity from the beginning to whenever. It's huge, but it couldn't be big enough for me to say, take my son. Really. So, this particular church that you belong to has a rich history of martyrdom. There are two kinds of martyria, two types of martyrdom. The one that we get very weepy and very, Yalahui, it's happened again, in Egypt, when we see the blood of our family just everywhere. And we get angry and we get worked up, and people write Facebook posts and they write to governments and they do all of that. That's the martyrdom that we live with. But it's compared to the living sacrifice, the martyrdom that is paid out through self-denial is this big, like, look at us. When we lose, and 30 people is too many to die in an attack in Egypt. But then, look to that side of the church. It's empty. Those people that were martyred, we know where they are. Tell me if you know where they are. Now, if that's empty, and you have the knowledge of self-denial and of service, then self-denial becomes a privilege and a blessing. Because if we don't go looking for them, again, the question remains, who will look? And if you look at those empty spaces and then you look at one priest at the back, do we expect, because it's our right as lay people to have our Sundays to ourselves, is it the job of one priest? If you do some number crunching, just go home, find out how many families are in this church, then find out how many priests, and work out how many families per priest and how many phone calls to get in contact with every single family. Impossible. And then once, and I've heard it so many times from people, the priest starts to visit people, and then the people that are in the church go, but why don't you visit us? Because I'm looking for those people. Why don't you come and help should be the, come and, how about you take 5 names and you go that way and you go that way. But some of us we think we're entitled to a visit from the priest because we belong to this church. Okay, I'm a bit harsh, but there's too many of us, and there's us here tonight. If each of us went home during Lent, and I'll get to that, and decided to find one of those people, and maybe they're not lost, maybe they're just lonely, maybe they're just busy, maybe they're just in depression, maybe there's a million reasons why they're not here. They're lazy, they're preoccupied, they're too far away, they're in another state. But it doesn't mean, with the technology that we have, that you can't sacrifice a moment to call them and just touch base. People think service is sort of, I've got to know the Bible and I've got to have a theological degree. The reality is that the 12 that were left with the responsibility, actually, with all respect, they weren't very good fishermen. There's actually no account of them ever catching a huge catch without Christ with them. And they were professional fishermen. So, most of you in the room will have some sort of further education. So, this country that you find yourself in, that your family came for whatever reason, you've educated, you're not under oppression, you're not going to get shot at, you're safe. Now, where's the self-denial in this mission when he sent your families here? So, Galatians, I have been crucified with Christ, and wouldn't we all agree that that would be absolutely magnificent if we could say those words? I have been crucified with Christ, meaning there's a bit of suffering, a bit of pain, a bit of uncomfortableness, a bit of hunger, a bit of people, a bit of, mocking you, people saying you're crazy, whatever. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. So it doesn't matter, because I'm imitating the Messiah, the Son of God. So what's it to me? And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loves me and gave himself for me. It's very little to ask for this knowledge that we have. So in the book of Acts, I have shown you in every way by laboring like this that you must support the weak. And this is the point I want to go home. Your opportunity, and it's an opportunity because God could have chosen a whole lot of different people. I remind you, only 2,000 years, which is nothing. 2,000 years in the history of humanity is nothing. 2,000 years ago, your ancestors were worshipping idols, and you were renowned for being the greatest pagan civilization in the ancient world. So your families were like my family. Only you received the message 2,000 years ago, and in the scheme of things, in humanity, in the history of mankind, 2,000 years is yesterday. So let us not be self-indulgent and say, oh, we've got it, and good for us, and let's keep it. Because that's what we do. When I was first coming into the church, when I was about 15, 16, 17, 18, and there wasn't a lot of English around. Like, we didn't have English books, confession was translated, yes, imagine that. The liturgy, the first meeting to suggest, not to have, but to suggest we have English. His Grace Bishop Antonius Moros from South Africa, I was in that meeting, I saw it with my own eyes. He suggested every Saturday, every church should be in English. I saw a man pick up a chair and launch it at him. Haram, what are you going to do? You're going to lose the tradition, God forbid, we've got to keep it. I don't recall Christ coming to earth speaking, let's say Arabic, because it wasn't really the first one you had, Coptic. He was Amharic, it was Hebrew. He was a Jew. So you guys, and this, I'm sorry, I apologize, you guys were like me. You guys, someone self-sacrificed themselves, their life for you to get the gospel. So the moment in 41 AD, when St. Mark comes into the kitchen and sits down to have a plate of hummus, he says to his mother, I'm going over the border to those people. And she must have said, why, my son, would you go to those people? Pagan worshippers. And he goes, no, I must sacrifice this myself to bring the gospel to those pagan worshippers. Without that denial, you don't exist. This whole building doesn't exist. These icons don't exist. Gone. No heritage. You're back to worshipping the sun and the dogs and the cats. So, if St. Mark did that for you, sons and daughters of St. Mark, who are you doing it for? Who? I don't mean Bible bashing. I don't mean preaching on the corner. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a living gospel with your name on it that can change lives. I came to the church at 15 because I went to school with a girl who was Egyptian Christian. And I knew her as Sue, but her real name was Suhir. And when I looked at that life, and I didn't know anything, but I did know that she had something that I didn't have, and I wanted it. And it led me to the knowledge of Christ. So are your lives imitating to the point where somebody goes, wow, what have you got, Mina, why is your life like that? Why can you stay controlled in this situation? Why can you sacrifice your Sunday every time and go to church? I remember when I started going to the church, my friends, because I used to surf at Cronulla, would go, get a call, 5 a.m. out there, and I'd go, I've got to go to church. And they go, what is possessing you? What are you doing? Are people asking you that question? Does your life reflect this Messiah? I'm almost done, I promise. So, I like this picture. It's staged, obviously. Then who will show self-denial if we, his people, do not? We look, when in Egypt, when the bus load of children were on the road to Ambasemwil Monastery. I was in Egypt at that time. Believe me, the impact was too much. And yet, His Holiness, we were in a room in a conference with foreigners, Germans and Swiss and people. And we got the news, and you could see His Holiness's, because he's a very tall, strong, like he stands like that. But at the moment of that call, he dropped for a moment. And then he picks himself up, and the staff goes down. And not accusing, not anger, no. He was, it's hard to explain, but it was the strength of Christ himself for his people that we will stay calm, we will forgive. And you could see it in his muscles, like you could see it in his body, that we will forgive, even in this. Even when you gun down our children, we will not attack you. If that's not self-denial, if that's really not martyrdom, not the one of blood on the floor, but of daily sacrifice. We live the living church. So we live every day sacrificing or giving martyrdom to the things that we choose we don't need. We're not called for blood, but we are called for self-control. And we honour and we look at the martyrs, and Ambabola was telling me the other day in his church in Tahta that even the government didn't want the bodies of the martyrs buried in the church because it's against the law. And he went, and apparently it was straight to Sisi, and he went, yes, do it. And they're honoured, and they've got a lovely place for them. But I stand here looking at you, and you are just as honoured. You are living martyrs. And you have a grand opportunity in this country not to sacrifice your life, but to sacrifice you. And that is worthy as those martyrs. And it is standing up in a crowd looking a bit different. The world is watching to see whether Christians really are different or not. If you're blending in, then ask yourself why. We should look a little bit like that, at least so people go, hey, what have they got? I want some of that. So they're watching. The true gospel is a call to self-denial. That's the message. That's the book that you believe in, that you have been named after. There are Marks and Johns and Lydias and Marys here tonight. This is the story you have been named after. So we have the name, and we have the crosses, and we have the tattoos, and we have the system. But are we seeing self-denial? It is not a call to self-fulfillment. Yep, I ticked the boxes. I had confession, I had communion, I went to church. That's your fulfillment. That's for you. But now you have to say, I have been given this for someone else. If it is only let's call them the lost sheep for tonight. If it's only the lost sheep of the Coptic Orthodox Church, go for it. Because for each one of you here tonight, there are 10 who are not here. That's the ratio. 1 to 10. 1 to 10. So you know 10 people who are not here tonight, ring them tomorrow and get them here next week. I reviewed the story of Jonah. So you know what, really quickly, he's told to do something, he says no, he tries to get away from it. God dragged him back because he had a purpose for him. Does that sound familiar? Then he goes, does the work. The last, and I didn't bring my glasses, but I just want to tell you how many people were in Nineveh. And this is 800 years before the Messiah. 800 years, we get a glimpse of what the Messiah is going to do. We know that Jonah's in the whale, 3 days in darkness, buried. We know that he is put up on the beach to go in and to preach to a nation that he thinks won't take the bait. And look how many people. It says here, more than 120,000 persons. We're not even called for that many, we're just called for one. One of these people, one. It's 4 chapters. Go home and read it, and you will see our lives written in the story of Jonah. We don't want to do it. We don't want to self-sacrifice anything. But in the end, imagine you at the end of the day, and imagine you get to heaven, and then God says, I'm really happy to see you. You know, I think we're spoiled, personally. I think that the Coptic church for me, when I was in the early years, used to be like a jewel box. And somebody would lift it because I couldn't grasp the language, so I missed out on a lot. So they'd lift it, and I'd see rubies and diamonds, and then someone would shut it really fast. And I'd go, oh, I want to see more. But I'm limited by the language back then. And I'd have to wait for someone to translate, or I'd have to wait for a book to be put into English. Now we have all those things. Believe me when I tell you, let them glimpse the beauty of this church, and you will fill these rooms, these pews. The people may not look like you, believe me, they may be completely different. In South Africa, we have thousands of Coptic South Africans, black South Africans, Zulus, very tough people. In 1950, I tell this story all the time, but it's amazing when you see it with your own eyes. In 1950, Amber Morkos left Cairo, went to Johannesburg, mid-50s. He stayed 3 years, he ordained a couple of deacons, and he brought 3 things with him: the procession cross and the vessels of the altar. And then after 3 years, he was training them in the liturgy and whatever. When you hear the liturgy now, it's a bit different. The words are the same, but the tune's strange. I'll tell you why. After 3 years, Amber Morkos was called back to Cairo, and he died there. And he left those 3 things and some of the hymns and the liturgy with those people. No priests, just deacons. There was a gap of 50 years. So you try and hold, if I tell you for 3 years, I teach you a hymn, and then I leave you for 50 years, will you be able to remain true to the tune? Almost impossible. But they kept the words. And so when you hear a Zulu liturgy now, it's slightly different, and the tune's funny. That's because they just hung on to what they could. One deacon alone. He was a Christian, but he was just introduced to Orthodoxy. He managed. It's an amazing story. When you see KwaZulu-Natal, it is just hills. As far as you can see, this man walked in every direction every day, gathering people to orthodoxy that he just knew because it was so beautiful. What he didn't know was he wasn't supposed to be holding liturgies. No one told him. And also, they didn't tell him that how he was baptized, he couldn't baptize. So he kept baptizing people, having a good time. Then 50 years later, Amba Antonius Moros returns to Johannesburg, has the man's name because it's in the church records, finds him, I don't know how, finds him. He's a Zulu. He's now 98. His name is Father Moros Kobe. He's now 97, I think, and still serving, by the way, and his 2 sons are priests. They find him, and His Grace goes, well, so what have you been doing? I'm really sorry we left you for 50 years. And the man goes, yes, you left us orphans. You left us orphans. But don't worry, I've been busy. And all these people, he brings villagers, like all over, and His Grace goes, oh, and what's been going on? He said, well, I baptized them and I've been having liturgies. And His Grace, I must have fainted. So what he has to do is ordain him quickly as a priest to authorize all the baptisms. Today we have 9 parishes throughout South Africa. People that have been Coptic all their life for 2 generations now, 3 generations in fact. We're up to 3 generations. They are as Coptic as you and I. They don't look like you and they don't look like me. And they don't live like you and they don't live like me. But they are true Copts. Because one man, Amba Moros, and then a second man, Amba Antonius Moros, who, by the way, when he said, I'm going to Africa, he went as a doctor initially. His family and his confession father just said, why do you want to go all that way? And his father said, why do you want to go and serve black people? They're our servants. And His Grace was like, St. Mark appeared to him. If you read his books, which are in the Maktabas, St. Mark appears to him and sends him. So he sacrifices. He was a pediatric orthopedic surgeon. Government job. Let it go. He went to Ethiopia initially, and he was a tutor and a doctor to the Emperor Haile Selassie. Haile Selassie offered his daughter in marriage to him. He sacrificed that. And he tells, because I spent a lot of time with him, and so we've written his story. And he said we'd eat off gold plates in the palace. He let that go. And now, and even back then when I was 15, when His Grace brought me into the knowledge of the church, he used to say to me all the time, and he'd have a big map of Africa. It's still hanging in his bedroom, in his cell. It's there. And he'd say one day there'd be a cross over Africa. He'd do it like that. Now, from Cairo to Cape Town, to east and west, there is a line of Coptic churches. And he laughed and he said, I haven't been there. And then just recently in Togo and in Uganda, we now have land. And they're nothing. They're pieces of land. But I've seen it. One man's self-denial of one life can bring thousands of people to the knowledge of Christ. Who wouldn't want to be part of that? Like, come on. What degree is anything like that? So, this Lent, it's very small. I just picked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things. This Lent, try this. A little bit of city self-denial. Strive to donate 1 hour a month to someone in need in the community. Coptic community, outside, don't care. 1 hour for that month. Someone you don't like. That's going to be even harder. So for that month, you have to probably prepare yourself for 2 weeks and then see it and then recover. one person that is not here, track them down. Strive to give 5 minutes of your day to pray deeply for someone. If you don't have anyone, I have a list of people that would love to be prayed for. We have a young man that for nearly 9 years has been addicted to ice. If I show you a black man in chains, you will be horrified and say, we hate slavery. But if I show you someone addicted to something, you won't see him as a slave. He is a slave, and he needs freedom. It's impossible, very hard, almost impossible to come off ice, crystal meth. But through prayers and through chasing and through picking somebody up off the mud all the time, miracles happen. But we need 8 people physically to look after that one person, and we need a church of prayers. I'll give you one name. Pray for that person because we need miracles. Strive to sacrifice, I'm almost done, the price of a cup of coffee and tithe it. So $4 times 7. If you, the church needs it, Thailand orphanage needs it, Africa needs it, Exodus needs it, Needy of the Poor, Lagna El Bear needs it, Cops needs it. Give it away. Go without your coffee. Give it to someone. Go and buy coffee for the man in the street. But this Lent, and coffee is a huge culture now. Everyone knows about coffee. Go without 1 cup of coffee, $4. $4 in Africa will give me a box of oranges that will feed 50 kids. Strive to consciously humble yourself in the next conflict situation. Back off, let it go. Just don't worry about yourself or being insulted, just back off. And you will feel you'll feel the control of, you'll feel God's hand, because when we really get upset, we don't like to back off. But then you will feel quite victorious that you've been able to do it. Strive to catch up with someone you haven't seen for a while by phone. Drop them a text. So many people, Mother Teresa speaks about poverty in India. Our poverty is loneliness. Strive to go without shopping for anything during Lent and donate it instead. Oh, yes, I knew I'd get that. That's the last word I'll say. Glory be to God forever. Amen. Any questions? Yeah, shopping. I knew I'd get it. That was it. That's it. Any questions? It's quite delightful. Try it. We can all continue to give. Thank you. Oh.
So earlier you were saying, and I agree with this, but I just want to see what you're going to say. You're saying that you think that God moves certain people to Australia, to spread the message that because they didn't know it. But like today, don't you think that everyone has heard of Christianity and everyone has heard of God, and some people know even more than I do of my own faith. Like they know so much. How is it that the way that we act is going to show them anything different to what they already know?
Would anyone like to answer that question? Gabriel.
Thanks. I think I'm answering it because I have a question as well. But I think delivery is very important. I think just about with any idea. The person punching you in the face could be wearing a cross. Do you know what I mean? And that's the first time you hear about Christ. And most likely, you're going to be averse to that particular religion if that's your experience. That's a very extreme example. But I think it's knowledge of something and your relationship to that piece of knowledge are two different things.
Yeah. we think in the 21st century that, that everyone knows it. But there's more discrimination now than probably back in the time of Christ. Like, there was a multicultural community there, and when the Holy Spirit came down, 14 languages were spoken. Like the very first gift of the Holy Spirit is to communicate. We don't have that problem. We've got Babel now. So, even in Arabic, you can get a translation on Facebook. It doesn't quite come right, but they're getting there. But there's an unspoken language. St. Francis used to tell his monks, go out and preach, and if you have to, use words. That's magnificent. And so people have definitely heard of Christ. We experienced this the other day. Gabriel and I, we were talking to somebody who thought she hated Christians. She thought. And she's been engaging with us for about 6 months, 7 months now. And she was like shaking her head. She said, I really did hate Christians, and I thought you were judgmental, and I thought your Christ was cruel. She goes, but you treat me very differently. You treat me, and you have, I'm not talking about me, other people, like a group of people. I now know that the Christ that I thought I knew, I didn't know, and I'm the one who was judging you. That was enlightening. So we don't have to love how people treat us, but we do have to love them. And that is part of self-denial. It's really easy to love people who love you, or easy to serve people who love you. Serve someone that actually is difficult and swears at you. I don't know what it is with Arab culture, but somebody went straight into swearing at me the other day, and they went straight to my mother. It's like, and is that the best you've got? And he was like, and he added things to my mother, and I thought, is that the best you're gonna make it personal at least? My mum's passed away. It's like, and he said, no, that's the worst I could say to you. I thought, all right then. And he went, aren't you upset? I went, no, you don't know my mother. But it was this funny setup. Yep.
I just have a minor comment. My voice is very loud, so I don't. I'm a nurse, so coming from university, they have the knowledge, but they're not competent. They don't know how to do things. So by you imitating Christ, by answering people politely, they get to understand how. So there is a knowledge, but there is a knowledge inside the knowledge.
The real knowledge.
The real knowledge.
Yes. Like we all know, I mean, let's be honest, we all know Christ. We're actually the best in the class. Like we're the top of the class, by the way. But do we actually live that? Two different things, maybe. Maybe. We can always do better. Yeah.
And sometimes I think I'll say, what is exactly my direction? How will I know this is what God wants me to do?
Just imitate him and he does the rest. If I was saying that to somebody today, Exodus has been around maybe 17, 18 years. If you told me back in the park in Tempe that we'd be doing what we do now, I would run a mile. Jonah wouldn't even catch me. Like, I'm not doing that. Because over the years, we've sort of, and this is the nice bit of, I think it's the Irish in me. It's like there's an Irish culture, just like there's like a Saidi culture. And I can write the book because I married one. So there's a bit, like, oh my goodness, why do these people think like that? But it's the same with the Irish. So somebody goes, why you're sitting over there with that person, you know, they got leprosy or something, or you'll catch something. And I go, yeah, that's right, yeah, this is the place to be. It's very cool, you know. It's nice. To me, that's Christ. Like, I don't want to be sitting with the people that are okay. I want to actually be sitting with the people that aren't okay. And when you see them come and go, oh my gosh, I don't really hate Christians, you go, that's where I want to be. Because one life has been enlightened by the love of God. It's worth sitting with 50 great people that are great church people. It really is. I challenge you. Go find people that aren't sort of churchy. It's wonderful. Yep. Mina? Sorry?
I don't have a
thought,
big
are you
voice.
saying it or is he?
So just in relation to the idea of self-denial and the struggle to get there.
It sounds very there's negative connotations to it.
Yeah. But
Did I cause that? It's there anyway, but I was trying to give it a good spin.
I think self-denial is good.
Okay.
I mean, at least for me, I try to struggle against my own instincts because they usually lead me astray. But there's this theory called the looking glass self, where people, by and large, shape their decisions and like their choices overall based on how they think they're being perceived by other people.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm curious what everyone here thinks. To what extent is the community kind of culpable for creating an environment where people can easily, engage in that self-denial process?
At 10 o'clock, I
was going to throw you a curveball. I said that.
Pardon?
I said I was going to throw you a curveball.
That's a hard. Anyone? Do you know narcissism's on the increase? Why is that? So how do we not create narcissists?
I think
That's another way of saying what you just said?
I guess so.
Sort of?
Sort of, yeah. I guess we're in a culture where we're constantly objectifying ourselves because we want to be perceived in certain ways.
Yep.
And
then we start to believe that lie.
Yes.
Yes.
But how do you detach from that culture that is everywhere? It's pervasive in your community.
I suggest we make our own culture where we're real. And it's real Christianity and it's real unconditional love. And if we did that, then those who are invited into that would... maybe...
No, I think I'm following your train of thought. I guess my struggle is with the real. How do you be real in front of people when there's so many expectations, even within, say, the church community?
Yep. In humanity.
In humanity in general. I'll bring it home a little bit. I used to go to St. Mark's, and another one of the servants there also commented this to me, and it was like, whenever I walk into church, for example, he said that he feels like he's being watched. In some ways, people are just looking at him, and there's this general feeling that, what's this person wearing this week, or whatever.
But isn't that narcissistic?
Or
a characteristic of it?
From his point of view?
Yeah. Is
it? I kind of relate to that, not because... I guess being self-conscious can be based on experience where people have made you feel self-conscious, not necessarily because you think you're the center of the universe.
Yeah,
Just ignore them. They're idiots.
most of the time. Most of the time. But perfect answer.
Good answer.
Be yourself. What? They say, you have curly hair, so what? People love curly hair. You have a big body, so what? You created beautiful.
Yeah. I hear you, and I think that's a very good mentality to have. I just don't think it's easy to have it.
If you take it personally, you get really angry, upset. Sorry, because I can see that. I'm a nurse educator, so I see a lot of young people. They come around and say, "I'm horrible." I say, "Oh, so what? You're horrible."
Get over it.
What do you want to do to be better?
Yes.
But if you say I'm horrible, you're stuck.
Yeah.
You can't see around you. But there is a lot of world out there. It's really good. You are really a very special person, and you need to actually believe that. they are really young. That's why they like to
I'm listening.
everyone around them. It's not really worthwhile, but they are the ones that's not worthwhile, to be honest. You just ignore them. That's why the gift of God, you have two eyes to see, one ear to enter, the other one to block whatever you don't want to hear, and you just continue. Continue. Life is good, trust me.
Thank you.
That feeling that you're watched when you enter the church and you're self-conscious. How do you think I feel when I walk in the street?
We had one of our staff members, Father Yusuf, Abuna Yusuf, came the other day, and some of our staff are not Coptic. Anyway, he left and he said, the staff member said, "I really like him, but he looks like bin Laden." It's like,
No, I'm serious, because people, like, I hear this, I know where you're coming from. People say, people being watched when walking the church, they look different or whatever, and people get judged. But seriously, think of any priest walking in the street. The different reactions I get. I get very strange reactions when walking the street. When people think I'm an alien, from another planet, the way they look at me. But sorry, what's your name?
But I'm sorry,
No, what's your name? Say what's your name? As Wafat said, is basically, and this comes back to what Debbie was saying, is we need to actually understand, our role is in life and our mission and how important we are in God's plan of spreading the good news, the gospel. But if people focus on themselves, and this is part of self-denial, is you need to forget about yourself, get out of yourself, get out of your circle, get out of your comfort zone, and focus and be determined on exactly what's your mission. Because you'll be surprised, given all the different looks I get, and sometimes comments ranging from, "Dad, who's this?" Someone said, "Jesus," and other comments or other looks, people look at me and say, "Keep away." It's like, "What's this alien coming?" So you get the mixed reaction. But the thing is, we need to be strong as Christians. We're taught to be strong, and we're not to lose track or lose focus of what our mission is. So always when you feel watched, always remember Abuna walking the street, definitely being watched.
and God made you that way, so why do you need the opinion of anybody else? If you can actually tap into God created me, He loved me like this, why do I need anyone else's? Like, it's hard, but if we can remind ourselves that we are God's creation and He loves us like that.
I think we see a different person in the mirror rather than we see who we are. And I think we need to remind ourselves, you're actually beautiful. It doesn't matter. We all have nice thing and bad thing, but you are still beautiful.
Yep. On that note, you are all very beautiful.
You are very beautiful.
Thank you so much, Debbie. I think everyone agrees it was a beautiful, deep, inspiring talk, and we thank you. I like it when people get engaged in the talks, guys, so keep up the good work, and we all benefit. So thank you, everyone, and thanks, Debbie, again. Thank you so much. God willing, next week we'll continuing the spiritual desires, and we have Abuna Paul Fanous talk to us about the desire for the Eucharist. So I hope you all join us next week as well. Announcements.